Hello everyone. Today's learning objective is to understand the main processes involved in the recycling of carbon. So today we are going to look at the carbon cycle. Please pause the screencast and write down your LO. Okay, excellent. Now can you please have a go at the retrieval practice like we would normally do at the start of a lesson. So pause the screencast and answer these 10 questions. Okay, right, if you have got a green pen, please use a green pen. If not, a different colour is absolutely fine. Please mark these. If you've got any gaps, fill them in. If you've got anything wrong, please correct them. So number 1, transpiration, is the loss of water from the leaves. If we're being really specific, we would say through the stomata. Number 2, what is osmosis? Osmosis is the movement of water molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration through a partially permeable membrane. So that's where water moves from where there's lots of water molecules to where there is less water molecules. Okay, number 3, by which process do minerals move into the roots? The answer is active transport. Active transport is from low to high concentration and requires energy. Number 4, there are 23 chromosomes in a human egg cell. Number 5, which part of the cell controls what is allowed to move in and out of the cell? That is the cell membrane. Okay, so the next 5 questions are things that we've done more recently. So number 6, what is always found at the start of a food chain? That is a plant or a producer. Number 7, plants originally get their energy from sunlight. In the following food chain, the secondary consumer is the human. Number 9, the environment that an animal lives in is the habitat. And number 10, an extremophile is an organism that can live in extreme conditions such as acidic or extremely high temperatures or really high pressure. Okay, so make sure you've made the corrections, make sure you've filled in any gaps. If you've missed any, just go back and listen to the answers again. Okay. Moving on then. So just to recap, the learning objective today is to understand the main processes involved in the recycling of carbon. So on this slide here, we've got diamond, we've got leaves, there's some coal there, which is a fossil fuel, and then we've also got the ocean with the atmosphere above the top of the ocean. Now, the link between these pictures is that they all contain carbon, which you've probably guessed by looking at our learning objective. So diamond is solely made of carbon. So the way that by which the carbon is put under high temperature and high pressure allows diamond, which is a precious stone, to be made. Leaves contain glucose. Glucose is a product of photosynthesis. Glucose has got the chemical formula C6H12O6, so they contain carbon as well. Oceans act as what we call carbon sinks. So oceans actually absorb some of the carbon dioxide from the air into the oceans, and fossil fuels are made of carbon as well. So it's really important that you can see there we've got something that is living, okay, so the leaves, and then we've got non-living things, the diamond, the ocean, the coal, that also contain carbon. So the way that we're going to talk about carbon today is this movement of carbon from the living to the non-living world, back to the living world, back to the non-living world, which all makes up the carbon cycle. Okay. Moving on then, so this is just a little bit of a summary of what I've just said on the last slide. Materials are continually being cycled through ecosystems. An example of this is a carbon cycle. The amount of carbon on Earth is fixed, meaning that carbon isn't made or destroyed, but carbon is cycled between living organisms and the non-living world. Okay, moving on then. This is a little bit of revision for you from B1 and potentially C1 as well. So what I would like you to do is pause this screencast and write down the word equations for photosynthesis, respiration and combustion. Now, it'd be really good if you could try and stretch yourself as well and get the symbol equations written down as well. But word equations definitely need to be written down, and also a definition of what each of these processes are. So pause the screencast and write these down, please. Okay, fantastic. So we are now looking at the correct equations. So the word equations are there for you. Please, with your green pen or a different coloured pen if you have got one, can you please make sure that you have got the information on this slide in your book. So photosynthesis is a chemical process which uses light energy to form glucose. So there's the equation for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water makes glucose plus oxygen. Respiration is a chemical process that releases energy from glucose in cells. So that happens in plants and in animals. And that is glucose plus oxygen makes water plus carbon dioxide. And then energy in brackets. Energy isn't made of atoms, therefore it isn't actually part of the word equation, but we can add it there in brackets. And then combustion, the process of burning something. So we've got the example there, fuel plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide plus water. You will notice that carbon dioxide, glucose, glucose, carbon dioxide again, fuel, carbon dioxide are all in green. They are the molecules that contain carbon. So I've just highlighted those. If you have got a highlighter, you may want to highlight those because they are the chemicals that actually contain the carbon that we are talking about today. Okay, so you may want to pause the screencast now and make sure you've corrected the equations and definitions that you have written down. Okay, right, you need to jot this diagram please down onto a piece of paper. If you are in a lesson, you will be given this, so you'll be given this diagram. If not, at home, just write the words. So you could write animal, factory, plants, carbon dioxide and fossil fuels, and then draw the arrows as they are on the screen now. So pause the screencast and copy this diagram into your books, please. Okay, so this is the carbon cycle. So when you are looking at this, we need to be able to talk about which processes put carbon dioxide or carbon back into the atmosphere, which processes take carbon out of the atmosphere, and how they are cycled. So you should have this drawn into your books now or onto paper, and they are numbered, so you can either write the words onto the diagram or write them as a little key at the side. So number one, carbon dioxide is being put into the atmosphere. So that should be respiration. Okay, so please remember that plants also respire. So number one is respiration because carbon dioxide is being released into the atmosphere. Number two is photosynthesis. Plants taking carbon dioxide through the stomata to enable them to photosynthesize, and that process happens in the chloroplasts. Number three is also respiration. So like plants, animals also respire. So please make sure you write number three is respiration. Number four is the burning of fossil fuels, and therefore the process that you need to write down for number four is combustion. Number five is simply feeding. So the cow is eating the plant and the glucose that is stored within the plant will go into the cow. So that carbon is transferring from the plant to the animal. And number six, which is an arrow from both plants and animals, is that production of fossil fuels, which happens when animals and plants die. Now, what you can also say for number six is that not all plants and animals will become fossil fuels. Microorganisms will also decay plants and animals, which means that carbon dioxide will be released back into the atmosphere because the microorganisms will also be respiring. So please add that to your diagram that at number six, yes, those dead animals and plants can become fossil fuels, but also microorganisms will feed on those dead animals and plants. And as they are feeding on them, they're breaking them down, putting nutrients, minerals back into the soil, as well as respiring themselves. Because remember, microorganisms are living things. Again, if you need to just listen back to the last couple of minutes about this diagram, please do. But in summary, number one is respiration. Number two, photosynthesis. Number three, respiration. Number four, combustion. Number five is feeding. Number six is the dead animal and plants becoming fossil fuels, or the breaking down, the decay of dead animals and plants by microorganisms. And please remember that microorganisms also respire, so they will put carbon back into the atmosphere. Okay, right, so moving on, just a little progress check, see how you got on. Try not to look back on what you have just done. Please pause the screencast now and answer these questions. Okay, hopefully you've had a really good go at that. So again, pick up a green pen or a different coloured pen. Number 1, which number represents photosynthesis? That would be number 2. Number 2, which number represents combustion? The answer is number 4. Number 3, what does number 1 represent? That is respiration. Number 4, which molecule do plants make that contains carbon? That is glucose. And number 5, which process involves microorganisms? So the decaying of dead material involves microorganisms, and the microorganisms will respire. So make sure that you have marked those. Again, if you need to listen to them again, just rewind the screencast and listen to the answers again. Okay. Right, so moving on then, we're just going to quickly look at the human activity that has an impact on the carbon cycle. So hopefully you'll recognise at least 3 out of 4 of these diagrams. So the top left-hand corner there, we've got deforestation. The top right-hand corner there, we've got the logs from the trees being burnt. Bottom right-hand corner there, we have got combustion, so the burning of fossil fuels in factories. And this bottom left-hand corner here is what we call a peat bog. So that's P-E-A-T, a peat bog. Now, peat bogs are full of dead vegetation, so full of sort of dead plants, and they are found all over England and Scotland. They are a little bit like the oceans, as they're in the fact that they act as a carbon sink, so they have a lot of carbon absorbed in them. Now, sometimes they can be used as a very cheap fuel. So if you burn the peat bogs, or when people burn the peat bogs, a lot of carbon dioxide is put back into the atmosphere, even more than is put back into the atmosphere when we burn a fossil fuel. So it can be really detrimental to the atmosphere. Not only do they stop absorbing the carbon dioxide, when they are burnt, they release loads into the atmosphere. Deforestation. Now, obviously, plants take in carbon dioxide. So if you cut them down, there's less carbon dioxide being taken from the atmosphere. Burning the logs of the trees, they will contain carbon. So we're straight away putting that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. And the combustion of fossil fuels, the carbon is trapped within a fossil fuel. So if we burn them, we're putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So all of these are increasing the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere around us, which leads to global warming, which we'll talk about in another lesson. Okay, right. So what's the alternative? Just very quickly, we can use hydroelectric power, solar panels, wind energy. All of these can be used to reduce the amount of carbon being put back into the atmosphere. Planting trees, so a lot of projects now happen where if you cut 1,000 trees down, the company will also plant them. But that can be a problem because it takes a long time for the trees to grow. But there are alternatives to the burning of fossil fuels, which, as a nation and, lots of different countries at the moment are trying to make sure that we use these renewable energy sources. Okay, right. So last bit now then, we're going to do a true or false. So the screencast can be paused, or you can just, I'll wait for a few seconds, read the statement and answer true or false, and we're going to mark them straight away. So the first one is, green plants use carbon dioxide in photosynthesis. Is that true or false? Okay, that is true. Green plants do use carbon dioxide in photosynthesis, so make sure you mark these as we go through. Next one, combustion removes carbon from the atmosphere. Is that true or false? Okay, that is false. Combustion does not remove carbon from the atmosphere. The burning of fossil fuels actually puts carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Okay, next one. True or false? Respiration adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Okay. That one is true. Respiration, remember that equation, oxygen plus glucose makes carbon dioxide plus water. So that definitely is true. Next question. Respiration only occurs in animals. Okay, that one is false. Respiration only occurs in animals is false. It happens in animals and plants. So both animals and plants respire. Next one. Decomposers remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. True or false? Okay, that one is false. They respire and therefore they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So they don't remove it, they put it into the atmosphere. Fossil fuels represent a huge but decreasing store of carbon. True or false? That one is true. So fossil fuels do represent a huge but decreasing store of carbon. We have used fossil fuels over the last many decades at an alarming rate, so it's decreasing very, very quickly. Okay, next one. Increasing carbon dioxide may cause global cooling. True or false? That one is false. Increasing carbon dioxide may cause global warming, which I've mentioned before we will look at in a future lesson. Next, true or false, respiration releases energy to the environment in the form of heat. That one is true. Respiration releases energy to the environment in the form of heat. You only have to think about yourself when you are exercising, your respiration rate will go up, you will get warmer. You're releasing that heat energy into the environment. Okay, right, so last thing for today's lesson then, there are 8 questions there that I would like you to complete, please. So pause the screencast and answer these questions. If you are watching this at home, please can you answer these questions and can you email them to me, please, today? If you are watching this in the lesson, I will send the answers to the cover teacher who is taking this lesson and you can self-assess them. If you have got time, there will be some exam questions that you can have a go at, and we will look at those next lesson. Thank you for listening. Hope you've got all the notes down. If there's anything that you need to look at again, please go back in the screencast and make sure you've got all the information clearly written down. Have a great day. Bye-bye.